It's been to the advantage of all of you great people that have been doing so much tremendous work for the last while. And any of you who have not been at the exhibition, please get over there and support all of our colleagues. There's some wonderful work going on there, and of course it is the place to do business. We are here in the land of opportunity, as the Prime Minister said this morning, in the sort of centre of the region, and it's all happening at Egypt's 2019. Let me very quickly run you through the afternoon. We're going to have a ministerial panel any minute now. Then we're going into the international organisation panel. We're absolutely delighted. After that, I have an opportunity to talk to two leading CEOs here at the international oil companies. Bob Dudley will join me on stage from BP, and Patrick Pouyanné from Total will be with me also. So there'll be an opportunity to see what two of the big players are doing, not just in Egypt, but just globally, and really get their impressions in terms of what's happening here. Later, we'll be really looking at gas and how it's working, and then followed by another global leaders panel on the downstream, and after that the CEO Strategic Roundtable. So we have all that to get through for this afternoon, and we have a gala dinner on top of that. So bear with us. In this panel we're going to be talking about global cooperation, energy transition, future-proofing the energy, partnership, people and prosperity. So with all of that, let me get my panel up here on the stage. We're absolutely delighted to have with us the Minister of Oil from Bahrain. Please give a very warm welcome for His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa Al Khalifa. And thank you for your kind patience and waiting, and wonderful, of course, to see you. Now, we're also thrilled and delighted to have with us, of course, for the first time, new in the job, but not new to government and not new to ministry, the Minister of Petroleum, Energy and Renewable Energy from Côte d'Ivoire. Please welcome Abdurrahman Sisi. And you're very welcome.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And of course, we are beyond thrilled. So a very warm welcome for the star of our show here, the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources from Egypt, His Excellency Tarek El-Molla. So our afternoon is well underway now. And we're doing the express versions here, about 30 minutes per panel. Your Excellency, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's an absolute honor for me to be here with you, gentlemen, and to moderate this panel. Thank you all. Now, Mr. El-Molla, I'd like to start with you. I know you've got a very busy day. Everybody wants your attention. And again, for this session, when we look at what's going on in Egypt, and we heard some of it this morning, really, so much has been happening in the last few years. And so much positive news. I mean, it's been it's been good here. It's about people, it's about prosperity. It's not just oil and gas. This is a countrywide effort. There's a lot more at stake here. But again, how important is this region, and how important has Egypt become in the global picture?
First of all, I would like to start by thanking really all participants here coming to this important conference and exhibition. And I have to thank, first of all, my panel colleagues, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed, thank you for coming, and His Excellency Minister Abdurrahman, thanks you for coming. Ethna, actually the introduction was very humble for me. I mean, this is too much, but nevertheless, thank you. I would like to say that through the introduction that you spoke about how Egypt and why and when and where. So I have to tell you that it's not about Egypt transformation, what we have been doing over the last 3-4 years, but Egypt is history. I mean, and the role that Egypt has always been historical. Egypt has always taken a leading role in all aspects. So there is no wonder that now we are getting back to the position where we used to be. So when we first, and I have to couple this with what happened after our 30th of June revolution, with the, let us say, stability that came back to Egypt when His Excellency President Sisi came into power. So this sort of conference was coupled with what was the aim of having New Egypt. And this was the strategy. We are building together New Egypt. So when we talk about New Egypt, so each of the sectors, each of the industries are doing what they are ought to be, taught to be, and what they ought to do for Egypt. So accordingly, when you talk about oil and gas, and with our strategy of becoming an important country in the oil and gas sector, we should have had a forum like Egypt's, where we were able to speak about ourselves, to talk about our success stories, and to talk about the future opportunities for investments and for investors and for IOCs. Having said so, I think that this opportunity that we are talking about and the experience that we have had from a country that was really suffering from lots of deficiencies in many of the aspects. And again, when we talk about specifically gas, so it is a good experience to talk about a country that was importing, then a country that has reached self-sufficiency, then resumed exports. So here, when we talk about all this, together with our countries, our neighboring countries, our friend countries, and African countries, Arab countries, and the entire globe, there is something to be spoken about. So I want to say that why? Because I think that what we have achieved in only 3 years has started to attract the attention of everybody. Everybody in the oil and gas industry and in the finance institutions globally and in business reviewers and reviews and reports, everybody is looking to Egypt with some special attention. So I hope that this would cover some of your questions, Etna.
Yes, indeed. And you and I are going to have the opportunity to speak tomorrow afternoon,
Sure.
where we'll have time to perhaps do a better review of what's been going on and really look at what you've learned during the conference, but where you see the future going as well. Sheikh Mohammed, when we look at Bahrain, and we even look back in history, of course, you were always a major player in the oil and gas industry. You look at the energy outlooks for the years ahead to 2030 and beyond, and oil and gas is still vital for our existence today, without a doubt, and indeed for the near future. What role, again, can each individual country play, and in terms of, Bahrain being a player still in this industry, and how important is it that we pay attention to this industry now?
Let me begin, Etna, first of all, by congratulating His Excellency Minister Al-Mullah for a successful organization of the third Egypt Petroleum Show. I think it's a true reflection of what's happening in the sector here in Egypt. The discoveries of the giant gas fields in the Mediterranean and his ability to attract the majors. We've had some of the CEOs here. We've lost them now after a heavy lunch, but they were here definitely. And I think there's still room for more discoveries. I know that the Red Sea holds interesting prospects, and His Excellency now is working on road showing the blocks there, and the Mediterranean still has more opportunity. Very exciting times for Egypt, and this is the model that people really need to follow. So His Excellency had the initiative and the drive, and he was able to attract international investors by, I'm sure, designing the right fiscal terms, which is usually not easy in governments. It's an uphill struggle, but it's been a very successful model. So a lot to learn really from the Egyptian model. And what you really need now is, because of the drop in oil prices, there has been a lack of investments. I think the market pundits are beginning to understand the risk of the underinvestment in the oil and gas sector. So Egypt is part of the solution. They have been successful in attracting investments when oil prices were low. And His Excellency brought the Zuhr field in record time, at a time where investment budgets were not so large. I think the real lesson to be learned is what has been applied in Egypt. And I think the world needs affordable energy. And unfortunately, affordable energy is hydrocarbons. I don't think there's anything wrong with hydrocarbons. There might be issues with emissions, but we're upgrading our refineries, we're upgrading our specifications. The International Maritime Organization has a strict rule coming up in the next year by 2020 with stopping bunker fuel oil above a certain sulfur grade. All of that is ultimately going to impact positively on the environment. But hydrocarbons should really not be looked at in a negative sense there. In a nutshell, you need more investments in exploration and development. And the Egyptian model is probably one of the better models to follow.
And indeed, when you look at, I think, the growth in population and the growth in energy demand, locally here and in the region too, this is, apart from a global growth, I think it's really speeding up here in the region. And this, of course, what we're also seeing in Côte d'Ivoire. Now, of course, you're no stranger to government. You've been a budget minister. You've been with the finance department. You've been an advisor with the president. You know the role that oil and gas plays. You've also been a banker. So we put all of that together, and you're certainly, congratulations on your recent appointment, and we're thrilled. We hope this is one of your first conferences that we're delighted to see you at. But we look at the production in Côte d'Ivoire at the moment, and it's about 35,000 barrels, not quite 40, heading up there, one would hope. But you've got a huge population that's really looking for energy, for oil and gas and all. But I noticed also in your title, you're not just oil and gas, your water, your electricity, your renewable energy. You've got quite a portfolio. How do you meet that demand internally, and then as a major player in West Africa to, deliver to the region?
Thanks. Before that, I will also want to congratulate my brother for organizing this event. It's quite interesting. I was quite impressed by the organization, and we had the chance also to meet some of the CEOs of the major companies. So it was really good for us to be here. And thanks for the organization. It's a pleasure to be in Egypt. In Côte d'Ivoire, the way we look at the oil and gas market, it's not only as one business. We look at it in a relationship with energy, with electricity. That's the reason why the ministry has always been together, oil and gas and energy, in order to have the synergy. And we part of a community. So Côte d'Ivoire is a big player, and the way we look at it also is to make sure that we produce energy not only for Côte d'Ivoire, but also for the neighboring countries. We currently export electricity to 6 neighboring countries, and by 2020, we're actually going to put 2 more countries, so we're going to export to 8 countries in the region. Right now, we produce, if you put gas on top, we're around 70,000, 70. Barrel of oil equivalent.
Equivalent, absolutely.
And yeah, the goal is to go a lot higher than that. We have approximately 48 blocks in the country. 4 of them are in production. That's where we get the 70,000 barrel of oil equivalent. 24 are currently in exploration, and 20 are free. So the goal is really to make sure that we get a lot more companies to come to Côte d'Ivoire for investment in exploration and production, to make sure that we actually have more gas to produce electricity. But not only, because when you look at the demand, when you look at the different factors, we know we need to increase significantly the offer, the supply of energy. And we need to make sure also that energy is affordable. So that's a big step for us. On top of that, we need to make sure that we're compliant with the Paris Agreement on climate, which is really something important for us. We want to make sure that we have a mix of energy that makes sense. The goal for Côte d'Ivoire and the region right now is to get, by 2030, at a mix of 42% of renewable energy. So we need to make
targets, but yes, no doubt.
We think it's feasible. We don't want only to do hydro, because if you only look at hydro, it's easy to get to the 42%, but we want something a bit more diverse. We want biomass. Côte d'Ivoire is the first cocoa producer in the world. I saw some chocolate during the lunch, so I hope you guys enjoy the chocolate. We produce 40% of chocolate, but right now we don't produce electricity using a biomass. So we want to do biomass to produce electricity, and we want also to do solar. So there's a big project right now whereby we think by 2020 we're going to produce at least around 10% of our electricity using solar.
Hold that thought, because I want to talk a little bit about investment. So you can do a pitch in a minute now for us. But Minister, when we come back and talking about the sustained investment, because investment has to continue, there's still a lot of work to be done. You're looking obviously at gas. There's a great story there, and more to be done there. But also looking at the downstream as well. Talk to us just about the progress that's been made in 1 year. I don't quite want the full report. We'll talk about that a bit tomorrow. But again, within a year, and the other partnerships that you're still attracting here, and the other industry that's growing because of this.
Yes, perhaps when we announced that we've had our first gas from Zohr, this was in December 2017. But actually, this was just the first gas, and it was in the size of 350 million cubic feet per day. So,
and at that time, you were happy with that? At that time,
yeah, of course, because this was a great achievement in 28 months from discovery to market. Then we took it in an accelerated mode. So we started in January, with mid-December 2017. Then we ramped it up to 2 billion or 2 BCFs a day, and this was only in 8 months. So we reached this position also in August 2018. So this is one of the projects that we have been able to accomplish, and yet it didn't reach the maximum production level, which will take the year 2019 to add, inshallah, more than 1 BCF again for the Zohr field. So we are on continuous on the run in order to accelerate and bring up the production of Zohr to its maximum of more than 3 BCFs a day, inshallah, in the year 2019. However, at the same time, we are very proud, definitely, and very happy, because it has helped us to reach the self-sufficiency in September. So now we stopped importing LNG, as you all know. Not only that, we were able to resume our exports, and this is something very important. And when we talk about exports, it's not a matter of just being happy to resume export, no, but we are happy to honor our contractual obligations. And this is something that we were not able to fulfill over the last few years because of lack of gas. So we started to resume export, so we are able now to fulfill some of our export contractual obligations. Secondly, we had also some other phases of other important projects that we spoke about before, but definitely the most famous is Zohr. However, we were working together on other important projects like Atoll, and we started to ramp up also the production there, whereby we reached 400 cubic feet per day as well. And many other projects are being done in order to maintain what we are always facing, which is the decline. So for the natural decline of production, we try to add on some other fields into production. However, we have perhaps, and I have announced it in my speech today in the morning, that second phase of North Alex, West Nile Delta, we started to have their first gas like a few days ago, and we have ramped the production now by today to about 400 cubic foot per day as well, so to reach 700 in April, inshallah. So I want to say that we are in parallel working into many other projects. At the same time, we are very active in exploration and very active as well in bid rounds. So I've announced also today in the morning that we are going to announce the winners, or the awards of the winners of the blocks for EGPC bid round and EGAS bid round. And these two bid rounds were announced earlier in 2018, and we've been able to finalize the evaluations, and we are ready.
When are we going to hear that?
Tomorrow
Tomorrow, okay.
press
We'll be in great
conference,
anticipation.
yes.
Great.
So this is from one
Yes.
side. The downstream, you mentioned the downstream. We are also working on very important projects of upgrading and expanding and building grassroots refineries in Egypt. And why is that? Because now what we are seeing that we have more gas, then all our power plants are being switched to gas. So normally or historically we were running most of our power plants with fuel oil. Fuel oil now is sitting with no add value, and we had to think of ways of fully utilize or fully add value to this bottom of the barrel or bottom of the distillate that we have from our refineries. Therefore, we have important projects in the expansions of many refineries in Alexandria, in Cairo, in Suez, and in Asyut. So I would like to tell you that most of them have kicked off already and in the execution phase or on different level of execution. However, we have planned that in the coming period, so this year we have one refinery getting into stream, next year another one, the following year a third one, and the following year will be a fourth one, whereby we see ourselves in a mode of self-sufficiency in refined products. However, this means that we need to import still crude. Therefore, and as His Excellency Sheikh محمد was explaining, that we in Egypt, we are not standing still. So we have very ambitious plans for exploration activities in the Western Desert, in the Mediterranean, and in the Red Sea. Definitely, we are doing what we talk about, conventional exploration and production, and new frontier areas like the Red Sea, which needs some more attention and some incentives to our international oil companies.
Yeah, and it comes back to the investment.
So,
and
exactly.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that one tomorrow. Sheikh Mohammed, again, we're talking about refineries. We're looking really at much more holistic approach as a national oil company now. You have to be in upstream, midstream, downstream. And again, congratulations on expansion to yourself too in refinery side as well. The downstream is really moving. But again, the entire sector is on the move, really, isn't it, in every country, and particularly even in Bahrain?
You have to be. Refinery margins are important, and to keep track of what's happening in market specifications, you need to continuously invest. Because if you don't, refineries would end up losing money. As His Excellency said, fuel oil today is a loss-making entity. It sells at below crude prices. And you can imagine as the IMO ruling comes in, it will be even further discounted to crude oil. So if you do not process that bottom of the barrel, your refineries will not make money. So a lot of the old refineries, if not upgraded, will have to be shut down. So it's either a choice of continuing the industry of refining by investing, or if you don't invest, you're going to shut it down eventually. Yes, we were lucky to have you at the groundbreaking ceremony for Babco. Yes, it's been a year since we signed the EPC contract. That's going to be Babco's largest expansion yet. Yes, we're putting in state-of-the-art processing equipment. We're installing for the first time in the region, it's called a resid hydrocracker. That converts fuel oil directly to diesel by using gas. And I told His Excellency about this process, which is similar to hydrocracking, but it's a bit more advanced. And we're looking at potentially investing in a delayed coker because of the specifications of the LC Finer, or the resid hydrocracker. You can produce what's called anode-grade coke, and anode-grade coke is what's needed in the aluminum smelting industry, which Bahrain has one of the largest single-site aluminum smelters. We're also designing a petrochemical plant. The new trend is that you need to, if you're fully integrated, you will have a much higher chance of making money all the time. Refinery margins go up and down. So if you do integrate with petrochemicals, today we were speaking with Mr. Pionnet, the CEO of Total. He has a state-of-the-art refinery JV with Aramco, which has an index of 12 on the Nelson scale. And that's a very high complexity, which means he probably will make money all the time because he throws all the bells and whistles into that asset. So yes, you have no choice if you want to continue in this industry but to invest. I think we've done that in Bahrain, and I see that Egypt has done the same, and this is the right time to be doing it.
And that's the perfect formula, because it has to be win-win. Abdurrahman, when you're looking at a country like Côte d'Ivoire, you have a presidential election coming up next year, and you've had a little bit of a checkered history, let's say, in the last while. Investors can pick and choose around the world. Of course, investors in this sector are also used to looking at, looking at risk. How are things looking in your country in the sense that you're able to compete with investors out there? Because everybody on the northern coast of Africa, now on the east and everywhere else, is looking for that money.
Yeah, I mean, it's just before I mention that, I just want to come back on the refinery. I'm going to come to.
No, and I know you're looking for refinery investment too.
So because right now it's actually a big question for us, because we need to make sure that we meet the new requirements in terms of level of sulfur in the product. So we know there's a lot of investment that's are needed in the next coming years. We actually have one of the only refinery in West Africa, in Côte d'Ivoire. And we supply,
of course,
so that's an area where Côte d'Ivoire want to continue to play a big role. Total is one of the shareholders in the refinery, and works are ongoing to make sure that we meet the requirements. Regarding risk, there will be an election in 2020 in Côte d'Ivoire. Nothing's going to happen. It's going to be smooth, because something that people forget to take into account is to go back in the past and see exactly what happened when we had an issue. We had an issue in 2010 during the 2010 election. But the issue wasn't because there were problems between in the population. The issue was that one person lost the election and refused to admit that he lost the election. So the process was smooth, everything was fine, and then somebody refused to accept the result. That was the only reason why there was an issue. Now, we're not in the same situation anymore. And the election process will be smooth. And we know that we're not going to have the same issue, because we learned from the past. The population knows exactly what the price of instability. And we don't want to get there again. And if you look from 2011 till now, our country has been growing by around 9% per annum.
It has, yes.
Constant, over more than 8 years. And when you look at the prospects for the years ahead, it's likely going to be the same. The last prospect from the IMF is around 7% up to 2025. And inflation is low. Inflation is below 2%. So you're in a country where you have inflation which is below 2%, GDP growth rate after around 7 to 8%, currency stable, pegged to the euro. I mean, all the ingredients are here for things to continue to be. So it's a good place to invest.
And any time there's elections, people get a little bit nervous. I mean,
no, they shouldn't.
Look at what's happening back in Britain.
They shouldn't.
They're just permanently nervous back there at the moment. So investment does have to have a bit more security. And good luck. We hope for the best there. Sheikh Mohammed, we don't have much time here, so it's my final question to you all, and I'm going to wrap it into one. In terms of the technology that's needed in the industry, is the industry embracing it quickly enough? And in doing so, are we almost future-proofing the industry to make sure it's ready for another generation of leaders to hand it on to, as we really sit within the transition phase at the moment? So you've kind of got about 3 questions there, and I want to short
So if you start on the upstream, and if the trend of discoveries in the world is the same, then the world is running out of cheap oil, which means you have to be better at applying technology in producing some of the tougher fields, or else you will have a supply problem. Now, either that or you discover more conventional fields. That's not happening as fast. So I think North America is now where this fracking revolution has happened. Can it be copied in the rest of the world? I think it's being tested. We're certainly testing it in the region, and Bahrain is we're fracking a few wells in tight formations. Argentina is testing it in the Vega Muerta. So the application of technology fracking, going back to mature fields, you need more enhanced oil recovery technology. A lot of the oil fields producing today are mature fields. So Middle East is probably one with some of the youngest fields. But if you go to Russia, for example, all their fields are actually very mature, which means sustaining production, as His Excellency said, there's a decline rate. You will lose an average of 5% from every producing oil field in the world. So it's not only the increased production, you need to replace 5% on average. That 5% is increasing with time. For refining, of course, the challenge is that to be able to meet those specs, you need multi-billion-dollar investments. Is there technology that makes that investment less? There hasn't been really a breakthrough in process technology for a very long time. It's still the same process technology discoveries of past decades. It just enhanced a little bit. So the challenge in those is you need a lot of capital investment. It takes a long time to build, and that obviously has a time lag. So if technology comes to the rescue, probably do it quicker and cheaper in processing. That's two out of three, because I forgot the third one.
That's pretty good. I'll take it on that one, because maybe Abdurrahman he'll continue on this for me, because we're about to wrap it up. And Your Excellency, I'm leaving you the final word, so bear with me. Again, you need that technology in Côte d'Ivoire, just like everybody else. You need to make sure you're delivering a world-class industry. And again, you're the youngest minister, I believe, ever in the country, but probably in the region as well. So when we also look, are you optimistic about the future that's there, for all of you and for the youth even to come? And is the right technology in place to propel you guys to, a global position, really?
I think the technology that we have today, we were not thinking about it 10 years ago. So I'm quite optimistic. I think the one thing we need to focus on is innovation. We need to continue to innovate. And when you look at our population in Africa, the youth, if you take the people that are less than 35 years old, they represent at least 70% of the population. It's going to continue. So we need to make sure that we find the right balance between what we have and the prospect. And we need to continue to invest into the youth. And there's one thing that we didn't mention in this conversation is local content. Because we've been talking about the oil, the investment and all. But if you want the investment to be sustainable in our region, we need to make sure that local population benefits from the investment that are made. We need to make sure that we create jobs for the population. So that's really something critical. I actually discussed with the Minister of Petroleum of Egypt, and it's an area where I want to see how we can collaborate and see exactly what are the best practices that are being put in place in Egypt and in other parts of the world to make sure that when we invest, we make sure that local people benefit from the investment. If we want to have sustainability, peace, and security.
It is. I mean, it almost comes down to, Your Excellency, Al-Mullah, the purpose of this industry, prosperity, and bringing really the people together and making sure that there are jobs there. It's an industry that there's so much expected from it. So are you future-proof at the moment?
Yes, I think that this is a very good wrap-up to what we were talking about and what His Excellency was speaking about, and as well as His Excellency. So it ends up by, to tell you the truth, things needs to be clear. So not only easy oil, easy gas also time has gone. It's all offshore, deep water, high pressure, high temperature. So we will all need technology. We will all need expenditure and investment. So this will lead me to something very important. When we talk about Egypt now, with all these challenges and with the investments, several billions of dollars to avail and to reach what we need. So this all aligns with the reforms that we are undergoing now. When we talk about the reforms, meaning subsidies for fuels, for energy, things has to be put in perspective. Nothing is for free. So what would be the answer? The answer is that you put the price and the adequate price of the product, of the service that you avail, but at the same time, and this is the most important thing, that with what we are talking about, the advancement and the technology and the investments, you avail more job opportunities. And what we are talking about is really, again, the future of the reforms and how we take our oil and gas sector into another level, which is the modernization that we were talking about. In the modernization, and this is where one dedicated program is for building capacity and our human resources. Not only that, but it is focused on middle management and the youth and how we are empowering them and how we are developing and training them. So when we summarize all that, we talk about real reform, real good vision and strategy that is coupled with implementation on the ground. And most importantly, as I say, and this is something that we've been suffering all the time, when we had the subsidy, it has affected our medical and health security. This has always threatened our education. It has also threatened the job opportunities because there was lack of investment, because we were not doing things properly.
Yeah, the vicious circle.
Exactly, it was a vicious circle. So now with the clear vision that we have as a government, with all the efforts that are all done simultaneously at the same time, I think we will reach the position where more jobs will be created because more developments are done, more business opportunities are there, hence prosperity that we were talking about. And finally, when we talk also about all these efforts, I think it fits with Egypt's being a regional hub, which is of course obvious now. So I think prosperity and the welfare and the well-being of the Egyptian people will be made since we have the plan, which is very clear, and actually and this petroleum exhibition and show and conference had witnessed that we are talking the walk. Really, we talk the walk.
Yes. Good, and long may it continue. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for all of you being with us at this panel from Côte d'Ivoire. Your Excellency Abdurrahman Sise, thank you so much for joining us. Bahrain, Sheikh Mohammed, thank you, of course, always delighted to see you. And from Egypt, Your Excellency Tariq El-Mullah. So wonderful panel here. Sorry it's so quick, but we got the flavor of what's going on, and good luck to all of you. I know you're all out there with great prospects and great futures, so we're all with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.